It was my husband William's birthday party, and we were spending the day together with our son's family. Our grandson Adam brought out a rolled-up sheet of drawing paper as a present.
"Happy birthday, Grandpa!"
William received it, saying,
"Thank you."
He absolutely adores Adam. The drawings he receives from Adam are always framed and displayed throughout our house. On this special birthday, a present from Adam would be particularly meaningful for William. I was excited to see how overjoyed he would look. With a loving smile, William slowly and carefully unrolled the drawing. However, the moment he saw the contents of the gift, he crumpled it up. Then, he threw it aside.
"Hey, what are you doing?"
I hurriedly picked it up and smoothed out the crumpled drawing. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be a portrait of him.
"What do you think you're doing, William?"
Adam must have put so much effort into drawing it, and I couldn't believe William would treat it like this. I lashed out in anger. He should have known that Adam drew it thinking of him, so why would he do such a thing? However, William remained silent, staring intently at me.
"Can't you see?"
As he said that, he grabbed the hem of Adam's shirt and lifted it up on the spot. "My name is Natalie. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I met my husband, William, through a friend's introduction and retied the knot after about 2 years of dating. We've been walking together for nearly 30 years since then. William has a serious personality, but at the same time, he has a childlike side. Like a big kid, he laughs a lot, eats heartily, and scolds properly when he needs to. His charm hasn't changed even now." As I pulled out an old album and flipped through it, a photo from when our son was born caught my eye. Gazing at the picture of our newborn son, I recalled William's words from that day. "Let's name him Stephen." On the day our son was born, he said that while looking at the sleeping baby nestled beside me. "I've been thinking about it for a long time. Since I can't give birth to our child myself, I wanted to at least put all my effort into choosing a name." I love that earnest side of him. As I turned the page of the album, there was a photo of me with my art class students. I decided to quit my job and become a full-time housewife when I got pregnant with our firstborn, Stephen. However, I found it challenging to adjust to the leisurely pace of staying at home. Despite being pregnant, I took up a part-time job as an art instructor. Once a week, I taught a small class of 5 to 6 students at a nearby community center, guiding them through various art projects. I had always enjoyed painting as a hobby, dedicating my free time on weekends to creating art. After giving birth, I transformed a spare room in our house into a private art studio. This room became a special space, filled with art supplies and mannequins for still life drawings.
"Remember when Stephen was just a baby and he got so startled by the drawing mannequin that he burst into tears?"
I reminisced with a smile, looking back on my son's childhood memories. There was the beaming grin on his face when he won first place in the elementary school race. The tense, stiff expression he wore at his middle school entrance ceremony, nervousness written all over his face. The joy radiating from him as he slipped on the uniform of his dream high school after acing the entrance exams. The tears of frustration streaming down his cheeks after losing a crucial game with his school club. The determined, hopeful look in his eyes as he set off for college, ready to embark on a new chapter. And then there was the wedding photo from just 5 years ago, capturing a moment of pure bliss. He walked alongside his bride, Emily, both of them wearing the biggest smiles I had ever seen. Emily looked stunning with her chestnut hair adorned by a lovely tiara, her happiness mirroring Stephen's as they strode together. Both William and I thought they made a wonderful couple, and the entire family showered them with heartfelt congratulations. As it turned out, Emily had fallen head over heels for Stephen at first sight and boldly made the first move, kick-starting their romance. When Stephen introduced her to the family, it became clear that Emily was a woman passionate about sports and health. "Did you know Emily used to play soccer in college?" Stephen mentioned.
Really? That's surprising.
I responded. "People often tell me they wouldn't have guessed I was into sports," Emily laughed.
So you're a soccer enthusiast?
I inquired. The conversation flowed effortlessly as they discussed Emily's favorite teams and the positions she played. While I didn't know much about soccer, William eagerly joined in, bonding with his new DIL over their shared interest. Stephen and I could only listen in from the sidelines, struggling to keep up with their lively exchange. Before long, Emily and Stephen welcomed a baby boy into the world. The album contained a precious photo of newborn Adam, swaddled in a blanket, fast asleep. William and I were overjoyed at the arrival of our first grandchild. After much discussion, Stephen and Emily decided to buy a house, moving out of their rented apartment to establish their own family home. The first time William and I got to meet Adam in person was when we visited Stephen and Emily's newly built home. Until then, we had only seen our grandson's face through video calls, but being in his presence made his cuteness even more extraordinary. William was completely enamored with his grandson, playing with him with an enthusiasm I had never seen before. He must have been overjoyed.
You're so adorable, Adam. It's Grandpa.
William made funny faces and stuck out his tongue, eliciting gleeful laughter from Adam.
I didn't know William was so good with kids.
I didn't miss the slightly wary look Emily gave him. Once Adam started attending preschool, Emily returned to work. Stephen and Emily's house was about an hour's drive from our place. On days when preschool was closed, the working couple would drop Adam off with us. "I'm really sorry for always imposing on you like this," Emily said apologetically, looking impeccable in her tailored suit and flawless business makeup. "Don't worry about it. William is more than happy to take care of Adam."
Adam, welcome. What do you want to play today?
"Come on out, Adam. Grandpa's here to play with you. Don't hide behind your mom." At first, Adam was shy and clung to Emily, hiding behind her. But as he played with William, perhaps drawn to his playful spirit, he gradually opened up. He explored every corner of the house, curiosity leading him from room to room. Taking advantage of a moment when William's attention was elsewhere, Adam wandered into my art studio. It happened to be a day when my students were coming, and they were just starting to gather.
Oh, Adam, what brings you here? Weird face,
Adam said, pointing at me. I was taken aback for a second before realizing he was actually pointing at the mannequin I used for sketching.
Ah, you mean this.
Surrounded by the arriving students, Adam's shyness returned, and he hurried out of the room.
Your grandson is so cute, Natalie.
My students teased good-naturedly as they settled in to paint still life that day. As I was cleaning up after the lesson, he appeared again. He peeked out shyly from behind the door, watching me intently.
What's the matter?
I asked, and Adam replied bashfully. I wanted to see that weird face again. He seemed to be referring to the sketching mannequin from earlier. I took the mannequin down from the shelf and brought it to Adam's eye level. He touched it with curiosity and let out a wow in amazement. Then, he pulled out a sketchbook and a pen he had brought with him and started drawing something with intense focus. It vaguely resembled the sketching mannequin.
Could it be? Adam, do you like drawing?
Yeah. I love it. Adam mumbled, completely absorbed in his artwork. From then on, whenever he came over, he spent most of his time in the art studio. Of course, William felt a little lonely. He loved playing with Adam, but he wasn't particularly interested in drawing.
It's wonderful to have something you're passionate about. Who knows, Maybe you'll become a famous artist in the future.
William said as he framed his drawings and put them on display. Adam kept sketching the mannequin until he got bored of it. None of my students showed as much dedication to their art as he did.
Adam, how about using this color here?
I suggested, and he eagerly filled in the area with the crayon. When a vivid depiction of the mannequin emerged, even Adam himself was surprised, his eyes shining with excitement. We were having a great time, but Emily was not happy about the situation.
Adam, did you get your hands dirty with crayons again? It's even on your clothes.
Emily would inevitably yell when she came to pick him up.
Don't get so angry. It's washable crayons, so it'll come right off. How does this happen under your supervision? Please keep a better eye on him.
Emily's anger stemmed from more than just the mess. As a soccer enthusiast, she wanted him to play soccer too. That's why she didn't like me teaching him how to draw.
He's always drawing at home too. It's because you keep teaching him, Natalie.
Emily, that's not true. This is his individuality.
No, it's your fault, Natalie. That's why he's not doing well in soccer practice.
Fuming, she took Adam's hand and left. She had been sending him to soccer club twice a week. Recently, he apparently didn't perform as well as expected in a shooting practice test. Emily seemed to be under the misapprehension that his sluggish performance in soccer was my fault. Everyone has their own unique talents and strengths. Emily had a knack for soccer, while Adam had a gift for drawing. Those individual qualities should be respected, but it appeared that his talents weren't being acknowledged. It's a tough situation.
Don't worry, she will come around and understand eventually.
William reassured, but Emily's insistence on pushing Adam into soccer only escalated. One rainy day when Adam came over, he looked tired and sleepy. Usually, he was full of energy, so I asked him what was wrong. I'm tired from the strength training.
Strength training?
Apparently, on top of soccer club practice, Emily had instructed him to do extra training at home.
Even when I say I don't want to, she won't let me stop. So you're only doing it because you have to. No wonder your performance isn't improving.
Adam nodded weakly. I decided to inform Stephen about this. He was surprised and said,
"What? Emily told me Adam was doing extra practice because he likes soccer."
After that phone call, Stephen began to observe Emily's behavior more closely. She wasn't scolding Adam and forcing him to do strength training. However, he noticed that she was using a stern tone to make him do the extra practice.
"Come on, hurry up. 20 sit-ups and 20 push-ups each."
Stephen saw Adam making a face, struggling to endure it.
"Emily, isn't it enough that he's doing it at the club? He doesn't need to do strength training at home too."
When he pointed this out, Emily raised her voice.
"Consistency is key for this kind of thing."
But he looks like he's really suffering.
Of course, strength training isn't easy. You're an amateur, so don't interfere.
Faced with her stubborn anger, Stephen was at a loss. He tried to bring it up again later, but this time she completely ignored him. As this pattern continued, Stephen finally came to me for help.
"I don't think it'll make a difference if I say something, but..."
Despite my doubts, I told Emily to stop forcing Adam to do strength training.
"Natalie, stay out of this, please."
Emily snapped, and from then on, she stubbornly ignored anything I said. She seemed to despise me even more, and from then on, she stopped dropping Adam off at our house altogether. On days when Stephen and Emily were at work and preschool was closed, he was apparently left alone at home. Leaving a 5-year-old child unsupervised was considered dangerous. Stephen shared this concern and had tried to reason with Emily. "Hey,
Emily, don't you think it's better to have someone watch him on days like this? You mean leave him with Natalie? You've got to be kidding me. She stubbornly refused to agree. However, Stephen must have been worried sick. He came to me for my opinion as well. It is indeed worrisome to have Adam staying home alone. When I concurred, Stephen was delighted to have his thoughts validated and happily said, "Right? So, is it okay if I leave Adam with you, without telling Emily?" "We don't mind, but..." Keeping Adam's visits a secret from Emily would create a rift of secrecy between the couple. The thought didn't sit well with me. However, the joy of seeing my grandson overpowered my concerns, and I forgot all about it while drawing pictures with him. One sunny Saturday, as I was sketching with Adam, I received a call from Emily. "Adam's there with you, isn't he?" "What?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "How did Emily find out?" "I've noticed Stephen acting strange lately, so I checked his phone." At first, she suspected he might be cheating, but that wasn't the case. "I found the messages with you, Natalie. Something about leaving Adam with you. It's because it's dangerous to leave Adam alone." I tried desperately to explain, but Emily wouldn't listen at all. "I'll give Stephen an earful when he gets home. Don't interfere with our family anymore." Emily abruptly hung up, leaving me feeling upset and unsettled. I never imagined I'd have a falling out with my son's wife over something like this. How long would this situation persist? It felt like wandering through a maze with no exit in sight. Even though Stephen faced Emily's wrath after that, he still brought Adam to our house. "I finally understand. Adam prefers drawing over soccer." A resolute light shone in his eyes, determined to protect what truly mattered. Seeing his determination, I felt a surge of courage in my own heart. I resolved to focus on nurturing Adam's individuality. I found myself able to think that way. A few months passed, and when the plum blossoms were in bloom, William's birthday arrived. On this day, we always filled the table with William's favorite dishes and invited Stephen's family over to celebrate. It's a bit lonely with just the two of us, don't you think? It's better to have a big group. At the appointed time, Stephen and his family arrived, and the party began. As we chatted about recent events and enjoyed the delicious food, I noticed Adam's unusual behavior. He seemed restless, hiding what looked like a sheet of drawing paper behind his back. "Adam, you brought a present for Grandpa today, right?" Emily said with a smile, encouraging Adam. "Come on, be brave and give it to him." However, Adam appeared embarrassed and kept his head down. William gently spoke to him, trying to help him out. "Did you draw something? Can you show Grandpa?" Adam pulled out the rolled-up drawing paper and presented it. "Happy birthday, Grandpa," William said. "Thank you," as he accepted the gift. With a loving smile, he slowly and carefully unrolled it. A present from his beloved Adam should be extra special for William. I was curious to see what was drawn and tried to peek, but at that moment, the instant William saw the picture, he crumpled it up. Then, with trembling hands, he crumpled it further and threw it away. "Hey, what are you doing?" I hurriedly picked it up and smoothed out the crumpled drawing. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be a portrait of William. "What are you doing?" "Apologize." Adam must have put his heart into drawing it, so how could William treat it like this? I lashed out in anger. Adam had surely drawn it thinking of William, so why? William remained unperturbed and stared intently at me. He had a habit of staring at people like that when he was quietly angry. "Can't you see?" Saying that, William grabbed the hem of Adam's shirt and lifted it up on the spot. "Whoa!
Adam was startled and nearly lost his balance, but managed to steady himself. Beneath the lifted shirt, several small bruises were visible.
What is this?
I looked at William. He pointed his chin at the drawing paper, his eyes urging me to take a closer look. A portrait of William was sketched on the paper. However, upon closer inspection, the positions of his moles and the shape of his nose were slightly off. There were also blue spots on the body part below the portrait. Moreover, in the corner of the paper, the words "Help me" were written in small letters. I had a sinking feeling. Could these blue spots represent bruises on his body? Was the person in the portrait doing something to him? As these thoughts crossed my mind, I glanced at William and he nodded deeply. It seemed we were thinking the same thing. Someone was harming Adam. William had sensed the danger to his beloved Adam and crumpled the drawing in anger.
How could this be happening?
As William trembled with rage, Stephen asked in a puzzled tone.
Dad, Mom, what's going on?
Stephen also came over to Adam and gasped at his painful appearance.
Adam, how did you get those bruises?
I must have turned pale. With a sinking feeling, I showed Adam's drawing to Stephen. He was shocked too.
This drawing isn't Dad,
he exclaimed.
What's the meaning of this? Tell us the truth.
Adam burst into tears, startled by the commotion. Seeing this, Emily rushed over and hugged Adam protectively, saying,
Stop it! Those bruises are from soccer practice. Mommy is a liar.
For the first time, he rejected Emily and pulled away from her arms.
You and the coach bullied me.
Stephen, William, and I were all confused.
I don't even know the person in the portrait. Mommy made me draw it.
After saying this in one breath, Adam started crying again, wailing loudly. Emily, looking flustered, stammered.
Well, you see.
While all this was happening, Adam revealed everything, bit by bit. Emily had instructed him to draw a portrait of Grandpa for the birthday party. However, the person in the photo she showed him was an unfamiliar man. When he refused, saying he didn't want to draw it, she insisted that he draw that man's portrait. He was told that this was his new grandpa and was ordered to give the drawing to William at today's birthday party. After hearing everything, the gazes of William, Stephen, and myself all converged on Emily at once. Everyone's eyes were demanding an explanation, asking what was going on. When Emily realized that everyone there was on Adam's side, she sighed in resignation.
I found someone else to be his new father. I wanted him to think of this man as his dad. Him? You mean you were cheating? I had already decided to be with him.
She spoke in a flat tone, a malicious smile playing on her lips. Emily said that she deeply resented the fact that William and I were seeing Adam. She thought that we were taking him away from her.
You two love Adam so much. I thought that if you were rejected by your grandson, it would hurt you.
She had intended to brainwash him into believing that her new boyfriend was his father. Then, by making him reject his grandparents, she wanted to laugh at the sight of us being hurt by him. If Adam rejected us with his own words, she could also blame it on him. And she had planned to use that as an excuse to ask for a divorce. However, Adam had not accepted Emily's boyfriend to the extent that she had hoped. This was something that even Emily hadn't anticipated.
That's why this plan failed. Seriously, what a useless child.
She glared at him resentfully.
I don't need any of you here.
With those words, she stormed out. Only Stephen chased after her.
Emily, wait! What do you mean, you're going to be with your boyfriend?
But a few minutes later, he returned, looking dejected. Emily had jumped into a passing taxi and sped away. Later, a text message arrived on his phone.
I'm going back to my parents' house.
That was all it said, so he had turned back.
In that case, let's contact Emily's parents and have them keep an eye on her.
At William's suggestion, Stephen nodded in agreement. A few days later, on a day that was warm for the season, almost spring-like, they called Emily over to the house for a discussion. The four of us, William, Stephen, Emily, and I, were gathered in the living room.
I want you to take a look at this.
Stephen tossed an envelope containing documents onto the table. It was a report from the private investigator he had hired to look into Emily's activities. Ever since Adam started attending soccer club, Emily's appearance had gradually begun to change. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. However, Stephen became suspicious when she frequently visited beauty salons and changed her makeup. What was even more decisive was when he accidentally saw her exchanges on her smartphone. The person she was talking to wasn't a friend or acquaintance, but a man he didn't know at all.
I was shaken when I saw messages like "I want to see you again" and "I like you" with heart marks.
Stephen said in a cold manner. Looking at the investigation results, it turned out that the man was a coach from the soccer club. Emily stared at the documents without trying to hide anything.
I was planning to tell you after Dad's birthday party, when the timing was right.
Stephen spoke in a matter-of-fact tone, but like William, he was quietly angry.
I regret not bringing it up sooner.
Emily said nothing. After she ran away, we took Adam to the hospital to have his bruises examined. They had turned blue and red, and Adam told us that they were painful. Upon hearing this, the doctor said that he might have been beaten on a regular basis. The club met twice a week, but was he being hit every time? Or was he being hit by Emily while practicing at home? Adam kept his mouth shut and didn't say anything.
Emily, were you the one who told Adam to keep quiet? I would never do such a thing. I'm so disappointed in you, bullying Adam while having an affair behind our backs. But I just wanted to blow off some steam. That's why. Don't give me that nonsense.
Scolded by Stephen, Emily hung her head powerlessly as he thrust divorce papers at her.
We're getting a divorce. Sign this and get out of here.
Yeah, fine with me. Emily signed her name without hesitation. Just then, the sound of a car pulling up outside could be heard. Emily looked puzzled, but when I let them into the house, her expression froze.
Why, are Dad and Mom here? We've made arrangements to hand you over to your parents.
Before Emily could utter another word, she was dragged away by her parents. All that was left was the hollow sound of the car driving away. The next day, Stephen submitted the divorce papers to the city hall, and they were successfully accepted. He then asked an acquaintance to introduce him to a lawyer and demanded compensation from Emily and her lover. After paying the compensation, her affair became known at her company, making it uncomfortable for her to stay, so she quit. The man she was involved with didn't get off with just paying compensation. The fact that he had an affair with a student's mother became widely known, and he was fired from the soccer club. It was a relatively large club in the area, so rumors spread among the club members and the parents involved. The former coach became unemployed, and even after getting together with Emily, he is dependent on her for support. She is the one supporting him, working herself to the bone as a supermarket cashier and such. Occasionally, we receive messages from her saying, "I want to see Adam." Both Stephen and I have decided to ignore those messages. She has been served with a restraining order to stay away from Adam. We probably won't respond for about 6 months. Stephen sold the house he had bought and moved in with Adam. Adam is now living with William and me.
Dad, Grandpa, look. Oh my. That's Grandpa, isn't it?
Let me see. Adam proudly unfolded the finished drawing to show us. On the paper, William's smiling face was drawn large. The positions of the moles and the shape of the nose were just like William's.
You've drawn it so well. Let's frame it.
As William got up from his seat, Adam laughed. He looked so happy. The bruises on Adam's body healed remarkably after he came to live with us. The doctor had the quick thinking to take X-rays to check for fractures. I still vividly remember the relief we felt when not a single crack was found. He quit the soccer club and is now thriving both at preschool and at home. At home, I teach him drawing, which he loves, while watching him grow. Although the wounds on his young body have healed, I suddenly worried that there might be some lingering scars on his heart.
Next, I'm going to draw Granny,
he declared.
Watch me,
he said as he filled the drawing paper with my face. His free use of colors and gestures revealed a child's uninhibited sensibility. As I observed him, I laughed, realizing that my worries seemed to be unfounded after all. Can you increase the allowance? $3 a month isn't enough to live on. When I answered the call from my son, who lives alone and is a college student, he said something I hadn't anticipated at all.
What? $3 a month?
My voice flipped in surprise. What on earth was going on? I was certain I had been depositing $1,000 into my son's account every month. As I was confused, my son added more shocking news. I didn't want to tell you this since you got laid off, Mom, but it's really tough living on just $3 a month.
What? Laid off?
I work hard as a nurse, and even now, I'm just off a night shift. I haven't been laid off. To grasp the situation, I hurried to my son's apartment. Ringing the entrance doorbell, my son greeted me, but he looked thin and pale. He seemed to be cutting back significantly, not even using the heater in this cold. To save on electricity, I've been getting by with just a blanket. I've been desperately working part-time jobs, but with university studies and being busy every day, I thought I reached my limit and called you, Mom. When he showed me his bank book, indeed, only $3 had been deposited every month. I'm sorry for everything up to now, but I definitely transferred $1,000. How could this happen? For now, I'll go withdraw some money from the nearby ATM, I said. I quickly withdrew money from the ATM nearby and handed it to my son.
Is it okay to give me so much? Thank you, Mom. I didn't want to worry you, so I always acted cheerful whenever you called. But I'm glad I told you the truth today.
My heart ached for my son's bravery. It made no sense for something like this to happen. Could it be? I harbored a suspicion and told my son, I'll bring the money in person from next month until we figure out the cause. After I started handing the allowance to my son in person, my husband confronted me with a demonic expression.
Hey! Today's the day for the son's allowance, isn't it? Haven't you been slacking off?
My name is Vivian. After graduating from nursing school and starting to work as a nurse, which was my dream, I had been living a busy life. I had no luck with love and never really had a boyfriend, but I wasn't too bothered about it. I was hoping for a nice encounter someday, to date someone wonderful, taking things easy. However, it seems my parents were worried about me. Vivian, there's a son of someone I know who would be perfect for you. Want to meet him? Suddenly being told this by my dad was surprising.
What? What's this all of a sudden? Is this some kind of setup?
No. It's nothing as formal as a setup. Just going out for a meal together, the four of us. Persuaded by my dad, I ended up going to the meal. Nice to meet you. My name's Davin. The son of my father's acquaintance, Davin, was 3 years older than me. and worked as a civil servant. He seemed serious, but his eyes would narrow into slits when he laughed, giving off a gentle vibe. Attracted to that vibe, I immediately took a liking to Davin. Davin seemed to like me as well, and we started going out for meals, just the two of us, eventually leading to dating. We got married about 2 years after we started dating and bought our first home at the same time. Me, who had never had a boyfriend for so long, things progressed smoothly after meeting Davin, surprising my father. He was more than surprised, he was delighted, and at the wedding, he was moved to tears. Blessed by many, we started a happy married life, living blissfully without any issues. Soon, we discovered a new life growing inside me, and I took maternity leave followed by parental leave. I gave birth to a healthy boy, our precious son, Armin, and grew healthily. Davin actively participated in childcare, helping with household chores even when he was tired from work. I was always grateful to him. Davin, thank you for always helping with the chores. It really helps.
What are you talking about? It's natural, we're a couple after all.
I truly adored Davin, showing his soft smile that I love so much, as he said those words. When Armin was 1 year old, I returned to work and resumed my career as a nurse. Davin and I cooperated with dropping off and picking up from daycare, and we were able to support each other through daily life. As time passed, Armin became a high school senior. I turned 47, and Davin reached 50. Armin, I made some sandwiches for a late-night snack, if you'd like. I always brought a snack to Armin's room.
Thanks. Sandwiches tonight, huh? That's great. Looking forward to your snacks keeps me motivated to study at night.
Armin stopped his studies and thanked me with a full smile. I thought to myself how well-mannered he had grown up to be. Armin was preparing for his exams, aiming for a university in New York. If he got accepted, he would start living alone from fall, leaving this house. It would be lonely, but since it was Armin's chosen path, I decided to support him. And then came the exam day.
Well then, I'm off, Mom and Dad.
Putting on his shoes at the entrance, Armin, looking a bit nervous, energetically said goodbye.
Do your best. You'll be fine, Armin.
Take your time and read the questions carefully. Good luck. Encouraged by me and Davin, Armin nodded strongly and left for the venue. Armin successfully got accepted into his desired university.
Congratulations, Armin. It's sad to think of you leaving this house, but I'm so glad you got in. You really did great. Armin, you're a son to be proud of.
Davin and I prepared a feast to celebrate his university acceptance, and Armin looked really happy.
Thanks. It's all thanks to the two of you supporting me. I'll do my best in my studies at university.
Thus, from fall, Armin's living alone in New York was officially decided. To earn the money for Armin's living expenses, I decided to actively take on night shifts that came with extra pay. I was managing the household finances, and we had decided on a $1,000 allowance for Armin. Though I felt guilty about often leaving the house empty at night since I was a wife, I thought it was necessary for the allowance. However, Davin supported me without ever showing any displeasure. Vivian, thank you for working so hard. The plan for Armin's allowance is $1,000, right? I thought it would be tough to keep that amount every month, so it's really a big help.
I'm the one who's grateful, Davin. Your cooperation in various things has been a huge help.
With Davin actively doing the cooking and other household chores, I was able to work without worry. In the fall, Armin moved into the apartment we chose together, and we started the allowance. I transfer $1,000 to Armin's account every month. And in no time, several months passed.
Did you make sure to transfer the $1,000 to Armin this month?
You didn't forget, did you? Davin, concerned about Armin, would check with me without fail every month. Yes, I've sent it. I wouldn't forget. Relieved by my response, Davin smiled. Then, furrowing his brow, he voiced his worries.
I wonder if Armin is managing to live on his own okay. If he's keeping up with his classes. I hope he hasn't gotten involved with any strange friends at university.
It's okay. He wrote on WhatsApp that he's enjoying university life. You worry too much, Davin. Watching Davin worry so much about Armin, I found it endearing. I kept in touch with Armin regularly, and his cheerful updates reassured me. Time passed, and the season changed to winter. It was when I came home from a night shift and was changing in the bedroom as usual. I noticed an unfamiliar lip balm on the floor. Oh? Is this Davin's? That's unusual. I picked up the lip balm and examined the package closely. Davin usually didn't care about skincare products, and I had never seen him buy lip balm. It must have been the dry season that prompted him, but the design seemed more suited for a woman's taste than for men, with its slender, cute packaging. The cap was even decorated with glitter, and the product name was printed in pink letters. Feeling a bit curious, I put the lip balm in my pocket. That night, after Davin returned from work, I decided to ask him about the lip balm.
Hey Davin. Is this lip balm yours?
When I asked, Davin showed a momentary look of surprise, but quickly smiled and took the lip balm from me.
Haha, yeah, that's my lip balm. I've been looking for it. Where did you find it? In the bedroom.
When I answered, Davin's eyes swam a bit. What's wrong? You seem a bit off.
What?
No, haha. I was just embarrassed that buying lip balm as a man got discovered.
Men don't buy lip balm, right?
Davin responded while scratching his head.
What are you talking about? It's not embarrassing at all. Plenty of men buy lip balm. But the packaging does look a bit feminine, so maybe choose something more simple next time. Oh, right. I will. I just panicked and didn't look closely when I bought it. I realized later that I picked up something a bit girly. Anyway, how about we watch a movie tonight? Remember, the movie Vivian wanted to see has just started streaming? Though I felt a bit odd about Davin's attempt to change the subject, I had forgotten all about it once we started watching the movie. About a month had passed since then. As I was about to head home after finishing a night shift, I received a call from Armin. Hello, Armin?
It's been a while. What's up? I greeted him cheerfully, but Armin responded with a weak voice.
It's been a while. Sorry, I haven't been able to answer your calls lately.
Indeed, recently, it had been hard to get through to Armin on the phone. Though I was worried, he always responded later on WhatsApp, so I wasn't overly concerned. It's okay. But you sound a bit down. What's wrong? The words that came back from Armin were unbelievable.
Can you increase the allowance? $3 a month isn't enough to live on.
What? $3 a month? My voice flipped in surprise. What did he mean by $3 a month? I was certainly sending $1,000 every month.
I didn't want to tell you this since you got laid off, Mom, but living on just $3 a month is really tough.
What? Laid off? Who was laid off? I had just finished a night shift. I couldn't make sense of the situation, confused. But it seemed Armin was just as puzzled, his bewilderment coming through the phone.
Wait, Mom, you were laid off, right? So the allowance went from $1,000 to $3?
What? What are you talking about?
I'm heading to your apartment right now. Okay, I'll wait.
I hung up the phone and tried to rush to the station, but my legs wouldn't move properly due to the shock. My heart was pounding, and I tried to calm myself down with deep breaths. Then, slapping my cheeks with both hands to psych myself up, I started walking to the station, taking the bus and arriving at Armin's nearest station. I called him again to say I'd be there soon. When I rang the doorbell at Armin's apartment entrance, he soon peeked out.
Welcome, Mom.
Armin looked thin and pale, as if he might collapse at any moment.
Armin.
Seeing him like this, my heart ached and I felt tears welling up. Inside, the heater wasn't on despite the cold.
You haven't turned on the heater.
You'll catch a cold, let's turn it on.
No, we can't. It costs too much. I'm getting by with just a blanket.
Armin shivered as he spoke, and I quietly told him.
Listen, Armin, I've been sending you $1,000 every month since fall. And I haven't been laid off. What? But only $3 has been deposited each month. I'm not lying. That's why I called you, Mom. I've been desperately working part-time, but with university studies and being busy every day, I thought I reached my limit and called you.
I didn't think Armin was lying. He's not the kind to make up such things. And seeing how thin he's gotten and his living conditions without even the heater on, it must be true that only $3 has been deposited.
I'm not doubting you, but we need to figure out what's going on. Can you show me your bank book?
Okay, wait a moment. Armin retrieved his neatly kept bank book from a shelf in the corner of his tidy room and showed it to me. Indeed, just as Armin had said, only $3 had been deposited each month.
I'm sorry, Armin, but I definitely transferred $1,000.
What could have happened?
For now, I'm going to withdraw some money from a nearby ATM.
Saying that, I immediately withdrew a substantial amount of money from the ATM and returned to Armin's apartment.
Armin, please take this money for now. Until we figure out why this happened, I'll bring you the money in person from next month.
Is it really okay to give me so much?
Thank you, Mom.
I didn't want to worry you, so I've always pretended to be cheerful when you contacted me. But I'm glad I told you the truth today. Armin smiled with his thin face, and my heart ached at his bravery. It's unthinkable for something like this to happen. Could it be? But for now, more than anything, I'm worried about Armin's health.
Thank you for calling, Armin. Make sure to use the heater properly from now on. And I'm going to the supermarket now. I'll make you lots of your favorite hamburgers and curry. Really?
Armin's eyes sparkled. Then I went to the supermarket, bought ingredients, returned to the apartment, and cooked a lot of food. Armin ate, saying how delicious it was. I also froze what could be saved, so he wouldn't have to worry about food for a while.
All right, I'll come to give you your allowance again next month.
Saying that, I left Armin's apartment. The weekend, a month later. When Davin came home from work, he confronted me with a demonic expression without even saying hello.
Hey! Today is the day for Armin's allowance, right? Haven't you been slacking off?
What?
I just handed the allowance to Armin directly today.
Is there a problem?
What's with the sudden outburst?
When I responded, Davin looked confused.
And? Then, that's fine,
he said and went to change clothes in the bedroom. After changing into his loungewear and coming back to the living room, I immediately questioned him.
Why did you think the allowance hadn't been sent yet? Well, that's because it's payday and the day to send Armin's allowance, but Vivian didn't report it. So I was just a little concerned. Let's end this conversation.
Davin, angry and trying to quickly end the conversation, was definitely acting strangely.
Then I have another question. What now?
Davin raised his voice in annoyance.
Remember the lip balm found in the bedroom? You said you bought it, but was it actually from someone you're having an affair with? No! That's not it at all!
Davin immediately denied loudly. Continuing.
That lip balm is mine! I bought it! Don't make me repeat the same thing! You're acting strange today!
He said, yelling.
You're the strange one, not me. You're usually calm, but you're acting weird today.
I countered, and Davin raised his voice in denial.
I'm not strange. I'm doing fine. Really? Well, I knew something like this would happen today. That's why I invited some guests over. People you know very well.
I said and opened the door to the room we use for guests. Everyone, thank you for waiting. Please come this way. As I called out, 3 people appeared in front of Davin.
Nadia! And Dad and Mom too!
Davin was evidently shocked, his eyes widening as much as possible. The woman called Nadia muttered with a displeased tone.
Ugh, this is the worst.
And sat down at the dining table with an arrogant attitude. The in-laws glared at Davin, whose face turned pale immediately. Flashback to 3 weeks earlier. I consulted my father-in-law, a former bank employee, about why only $3 was being deposited into Armin's account. He immediately investigated, and it turned out there were 2 accounts under Armin's name. Davin was the one who went to open Armin's account. Though I said I would do it, Davin insisted.
Let me handle it!
And took the initiative. According to the bank staff, Davin had opened 2 accounts under Armin's name, claiming one for living expenses and the other for tuition. The card and bank book for the account I was depositing $1,000 into each month were in Davin's possession. Davin had persuaded Armin.
I'll manage one of the accounts for you, so I'll keep the card and bank book.
He said, somewhat forcibly taking the card and bank book. And so, Davin was withdrawing the $1,000 I transferred every month. To make it seem like he was still providing support, he deposited $3 into the account Armin had. Knowing the truth, I felt a surge of anger and wondered what Davin was doing with the $1,000 each month. That's when I remembered the cute packaged lip balm I had found in the bedroom before. Deciding to act, I hired a detective to investigate Davin's actions. The investigation revealed, as expected, that Davin was having an affair. The other woman's name was Nadia, and she was one of Davin's subordinates. Davin had been frequently bringing Nadia to our home while I was on night shifts. With the evidence gathered, today I called Nadia, along with my in-laws, to confront Davin about his infidelity.
Davin, I think you're aware by now, but all your misdeeds have been exposed.
I said coldly, causing Davin's already pale face to turn even paler, his lips trembling slightly.
So, the $1,000 I was transferring for Armin, you've been giving it all to Nadia, right?
Despicable.
According to the detective's investigation, you've been buying expensive necklaces from brand stores for Nadia.
What in the world are you doing? As I confronted him, Davin snapped back.
It's not just that. I didn't spend all $1,000 on gifts. Nadia's mother has been sick. She's been hospitalized for a long time with a serious condition. I was helping out with her medical expenses. I was just trying to help people.
Davin seems to claim this. Nadia, is that true? Was your mother really sick?
Remember, lying will only make things worse later.
Please tell us the truth. When I asked Nadia, she sulked for a while before responding.
It's a lie.
Obviously, it's a lie.
My mother is healthy and working in the fields back home. The sickness was a lie.
What?
You lied to me. Don't mess with me. How much money do you think I've given you?
Davin yelled, furious. However, Nadia, unfazed and mockingly laughing, said,
Huh. It's your fault for being deceived. Ah, I thought I found a good cash cow. Time's up, I guess. I was hoping to milk it for a few more years, but what a miscalculation. Cash cow. You said you loved me, was that also a lie? Hey, your feelings for me were real, right? You love me, don't you?
Davin, in his anger and confusion, seemed to forget that I and his parents were present. I wish I hadn't had to see my husband like this. Seeing Davin cling to a younger woman was disgraceful and nauseating. I felt like vomiting but managed to hold it back.
Look, why would a young and cute girl like me seriously fall for an old man like Davin? Ridiculous. How much worth do you think you have? Take a good look at yourself in the mirror.
Nadia laughed heartily. Though what Nadia said was true, her sheer audacity angered me.
So, that's how it is.
Davin was stunned, and I thrust 3 documents at him. One was the bank transaction history, the second was evidence of the affair, and the third was divorce papers.
Divorce papers? Are we getting divorced?
Davin was fixated on the third document, the divorce papers, without even looking at the first 2.
Of course. Why should I continue to be married to a scum who spends his son's allowance on his mistress? Well, I didn't intend to get divorced. I mean, it's a separate issue.
Davin's ridiculous excuses made me snap and I yelled at him.
You didn't intend to get divorced, but you cheated. And what you did to Armin is unforgivable. Is this how a parent acts? $3 a month isn't enough to live on. Armin has been working hard, saving every penny, getting thinner, not even using the heater. You're the worst. Just sign the divorce papers now. Well, I do feel bad for Armin, but I heard Nadia's mother was sick, and Nadia herself kept asking for things, so I really needed the money.
Davin rambled on with excuses. My father-in-law suddenly struck him hard.
Ah!
Davin let out a short scream and fell. Simultaneously, my father-in-law said,
Idiot!
Angry shouts filled the air.
You are truly a foolish and despicable son. Just sign the divorce papers like Vivian said, now.
Ugh. Davin was dumbstruck, and I sternly told him.
Also, obviously, I'll be demanding compensation. The money you embezzled will, of course, be added on top. Compensation!
Davin's eyes widened in shock, letting out a strange noise.
I'll be demanding compensation from Nadia as well, so be prepared for that.
When I addressed Nadia, her face turned pale, and she started yelling.
Wait a minute! Why me? I won't pay any compensation.
Why?
Because you had an affair with a married man. I have the right to demand compensation from you. Please make sure to pay it.
As I responded with disdain, Nadia glared at Davin and said,
Davin should pay for me. I don't have any money. I spend all my salary on cosmetics, clothes, and bags every month. I have 0 savings. Don't be ridiculous. I don't have any money either. You've taken everything from me. If I hadn't been deceived by you, none of this would have happened. You're a devil.
As they began their ugly fight, Davin suddenly turned to me, pleading. Look, Vivian, please. Spare me the compensation. I'll concede to the divorce. I'll agree to it,
So could you please not demand compensation? Please. I really don't have any money. Look at me. Haven't we supported each other a lot until now?
Seeing Davin beg with tears in his eyes brought up nothing but disgust. My love for Davin had completely vanished when I learned he was squandering Armin's allowance on his mistress.
If you keep this up, I'll double the compensation amount. Just sign the divorce papers now. I'll formally demand the compensation later.
With that firm statement, Davin seemed to realize my mind was made up and signed the divorce papers.
I've signed. Is this okay?
Davin said in a lifeless voice as he handed me the divorce papers.
Yes, thank you. Now, would you please leave this house?
Davin sounded foolish.
It's obvious, isn't it? We're getting divorced. We can't live together anymore. You, being the guilty spouse, should leave. Now, get out, both of you.
I yelled and drove Davin and Nadia out. My in-laws repeatedly apologized.
We're so sorry for our foolish son.
But they weren't at fault. I was truly grateful to my father-in-law for uncovering Davin's wrongdoing. After thanking my in-laws sincerely and seeing them off, I immediately went to the city hall to submit the divorce papers. That marked the end of my marriage to Davin. Later, I hired a lawyer and demanded compensation from Davin and Nadia. Despite being public servants, they had been openly dating, and there had been rumors of their affair for a while. The compensation demand put a mental strain on them, leading to repeated mistakes at work. They were moved to a department with less responsibility, faced with disdain due to the rumors of their affair, and Nadia ended up resigning voluntarily. Davin was disowned by his parents and led a difficult life in a cheap apartment while paying me compensation. Nadia had her parents pay off the compensation, but as a result, was called back to her rural home. She ended up helping with farm work under her parents' strict supervision. I received a call from Nadia's parents apologizing earnestly and learned of her current situation. They assured me they'd keep a close eye on Nadia to prevent any more wrongdoing. Eventually, I sold my home and moved closer to Armin's apartment. We often meet and update each other on our lives. I informed Armin of the divorce the day it happened. Davin had lied to Armin, claiming I was fired and could only send $3 a month. Armin was shocked to learn the truth from me.
That can't be. Was it a mistake? Dad was always so kind.
Hearing Armin's tremulous voice pained me. Indeed, Davin had been a kind husband and father. But everything changed once he started the affair. Thinking back to our happy family life hurts, but I can't dwell on the past. I must move forward. Armin gradually recovered from the shock and eventually regained his cheerful demeanor. Time passed, and Armin graduated from university. He secured a job at a renowned company, marking the end of my parenting duties. I continue to work hard as a nurse and will keep doing so as long as my health allows. My in-laws, who sent their congratulations for Armin's graduation, and I maintain a good relationship, leading a fulfilling life both personally and professionally.
Today, we're having a Christmas party with 20 family members. Make sure you don't embarrass me.
I was filled with questions at Kieran's statement. The Christmas party was supposed to be at Kieran's brother, Tommy's house. Soon after, my father-in-law Brent and mother-in-law Annie arrived. Seeing me clutching my stomach and breathing heavily, they looked furious, like they were about to face a demon. Then, Annie shouted Kieran and stormed back into the living room. There, Brent grabbed Kieran by the collar, and the next moment, a loud noise filled the room. My name is Emma. I'm a 31-year-old housewife. I married Kieran when I was 28. We met at a cafe we both frequented. We were regulars who knew each other by face and greeted when we met. It was just that until one day, when the cafe's popular dish was down to the last one, Kieran let me have it. Kieran is a big guy with a loud voice to match. He's assertive, but he was shyly offering me the dish that day. His bashfulness contrasted with his size, which I found adorable. Looking back, I was too naive. We exchanged numbers and went on a few dates. Our first date was for steak, and on the next one, he took me, in my casual outfit, to a fancy restaurant, a bit out of place. Kieran can be inconsiderate, making decisions without consulting others. He works at a major electronics company, where he's known for being the fastest to get promoted among his peers. He's proud of his work, which often leads to him acting on his own. Love is blind, they say, and I mistook Kieran's assertiveness for masculinity, which I now deeply regret. On our third date, Kieran proposed to me. It felt too soon, but he had already booked a wedding venue. Before I could even respond, I was shocked by his initiative. Eventually, his persistence led to a whirlwind marriage just a few months after we met. My parents were surprised too, but, like me, were overwhelmed by Kieran's forcefulness. He wanted me to quit my job right after getting married, but it was all too sudden, and I couldn't leave my job. I told Kieran I'd work until I got pregnant, and he reluctantly agreed. He was the type who preferred his wife to be a housewife. The first year of our marriage passed without incident, and it was a happy one. However, Kieran still made decisions unilaterally, from buying a car to choosing our new home without consulting me. I had dreamed of seeing the aurora borealis on our honeymoon, but next thing I knew, we were eating pasta in Italy. If I ignored Kieran's selfishness, it was a happy life. But everything changed when I found out I was pregnant after a year. It felt less like tumbling down a hill and more like being on a roller coaster. As promised, I quit my job to focus on homemaking. To our surprise, I was pregnant with twins. Kieran, deeply moved, looked forward to being a dad to 2 kids at once. He was so proud that he even bragged about it at work. His phone wallpaper was the ultrasound image of the fetuses, which he showed off everywhere. I secretly found it in poor taste, but I kept quiet. The thought of twins made me more anxious than happy. Kieran, on the other hand, was over the moon and seemed indifferent to my worries. The obstetrician advised a hospital stay due to the risks of a multiple birth, which Kieran agreed to. He must have been worried about what could happen. Hospitalization was a relief for me, but it brought new worries about household matters. Kieran didn't do housework. Being the eldest of 3 brothers, he had never had to. It wasn't just that he didn't, he couldn't. The fact that his family lineage was well respected and he was a direct descendant had spoiled him. He had always had someone to take care of even his personal needs. It seemed someone had been helping out not just with the household chores, but even with personal care. I couldn't possibly leave Kieran alone at home in that state. The thought of tidying up the house after being discharged was something I felt I couldn't possibly manage. So, I asked Brent and Annie for help. I requested them to either have Kieran stay at their house while I was hospitalized or to have Annie take care of our home. I get along well with both Brent and Annie. The typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict doesn't apply to us. Despite coming from a distinguished family, they're very down-to-earth and easy to talk to. The typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict doesn't apply to us. Kieran ended up staying at his parents' house until I was discharged from the hospital after giving birth. I checked into the hospital, feeling relieved. Under the care of the doctors and nurses, I safely delivered twins through a cesarean section. A healthy boy and girl, both crying loudly. When it was time to leave the hospital, Kieran, Brent, Annie, Kieran's siblings and their families, and my parents all came. We were a large family of 10. The nurses and doctors were surprised to see such a large group. They commented on how happy our family seemed. To an outsider, we must have looked like a happy clan. Although I felt a bit embarrassed by the commotion, I was secretly pleased. That moment was the peak of my happiness. But life became challenging from there. Kieran's attitude changed drastically. My life before and after giving birth were polar opposites. And not for the better. Issues I had noticed before became more pronounced, and any endearing qualities he might have had disappeared. This change started when Kieran returned home. The first thing he said was,
"There's nothing like being in your own home." As he stretched out comfortably.
I stretched myself too thin, indeed. I, too, thought my home was the best. But here I am, with twins in a baby carrier and bags in both hands. Thinking about the life ahead, there's just no way I can afford to stretch myself thin and relax. Brent, Annie, and my parents had all kindly suggested that we spend some time alone as a family. My parents live about 2 hours away by train, so they decided to stay in a hotel for the night. I suggested they stay with us to save the trouble, but they insisted on going to the hotel directly from the hospital.
It was nice being at my parents' home, but Mom could be really nagging after a while.
Kieran threw the baby care items we got from the maternity ward onto the floor and slumped down on the sofa. Then, astonishingly, he demanded, "I want a hot coffee." With both my hands full, and even one baby against my chest and another on my back, Kieran had the audacity to ask for coffee. And not just any coffee, but hot coffee at that. How does he expect me to set up the coffee maker and pour it into a cup in this state? And he was even complaining about his shoulders being sore, rotating them as if he was the one in need of care. I decided to ignore his request for the moment, and gently laid the twins down in their crib next to the living room. That's when I felt a dull pain in my abdomen. The cesarean section wound hadn't fully healed yet. My body stiffened from the pain, and my expression contorted. But Kieran didn't even glance my way, absorbed with his mobile phone. Raising my voice at Kieran would only risk waking the twins. And I was still too weak from the hospital stay. After putting the twins to sleep, I chose to remain silent, prioritizing their sleep and my recovery. Kieran showed no interest in either household chores or childcare. It was a stark contrast to just a short while ago when even the nurses envied our happiness. Now, all I felt was anxiety. The next day, my parents arrived early. And by the afternoon, Brent and Annie had also come to help. The four of us, along with the 2 sets of grandparents, began the challenging task of caring for the twins. Kieran, as expected, was of no help at all. In fact, he required more attention than the babies themselves. While dealing with Kieran on the side, I devoted myself to learning the ropes of parenting. Annie reassured me, saying that this is the time when the children teach you to be a mom. It was hard to believe that someone as supportive as Annie was Kieran's mother. My parents live farther away than my in-laws, so my mom can't visit as easily. It looks like we'll be relying more on Brent and Annie. Brent is still working, so we'll mainly depend on Annie. I'm really grateful that Annie is such a kind person. Both Brent and Annie adore the twins. Even when I'm clumsily changing diapers, they tell me not to rush and are very supportive. Amidst this, Kieran was the one who became sullen. He felt left out as we were all focused on the twins. He became more demanding than usual, asking for water, wanting to read the newspaper, or saying he was hungry. Brent tried to engage Kieran in parenting, saying, "It can be hard for dads to get involved in childcare, but it's rewarding once you try." Annie is kind, but Brent is also a good person. I wonder how someone like Kieran could come from such great parents. My dad also shared how nervous he was when he first took me out, trying to relate to Kieran. But Kieran showed no interest in these valuable lessons. All that came out of Kieran's mouth were disinterested responses like, "Oh, really?" Brent and my dad's stories were meant to ease the embarrassment and anxiety of making mistakes, a kindness towards Kieran. However, Kieran seemed uninterested even in their stories. Then, Kieran went too far. Not only did he show no interest in childcare, but his selfish behavior finally made Brent and Annie angry. While I was breastfeeding the twins, Kieran came up to me, asking if the food ready yet because he's hungry. Moreover, he insisted on having a proper meal, not just any frozen food. As I was bewildered, Wondering what he expected me to do while I was in the middle of breastfeeding, Brent stepped in to offer his help.
"You're not a child. If you're hungry, make something yourself."
Brent's statement was completely reasonable. Yet, Kieran became visibly angry.
"You're a housewife, so it's only natural you should cook."
"I rarely use frozen food in the meals I prepare." But to Kieran, even one frozen item meant I was cutting corners. Annie joined the argument as well.
"Babies can't make and eat their own food."
Brent further suggested that since Kieran could also feed the baby with formula milk, he should take a turn at feeding. Faced with unanimous criticism, Kieran made a shocking statement.
"If I do the feeding, then there's nothing left for the mother to do."
This comment left Brent, Annie, and my parents dumbfounded. All I could do was sigh. Afterward, Annie relentlessly lectured him, and Brent thoroughly taught him childcare tasks like changing diapers. Kieran's face during this time was sullen, clearly showing his reluctance. 2 years passed, and I became pregnant again. Kieran hadn't changed at all during these years. I was constantly busy with the twins and household chores. Without Brent and Annie's help, our family life would have fallen apart long ago. Annie helped with the housework, and Brent tried to teach Kieran about parenting. Kieran, seemingly annoyed by his parents, found excuses to leave the house often. He claimed he was busy with work trips and overtime work, but it seemed he just didn't want to be home. This pregnancy wasn't twins, but my morning sickness was worse than before. I couldn't stand the smell of bread, so pasta became a regular meal. Kieran was unhappy about this too, constantly complaining about wanting bread. Annie, frustrated by his complaints, told him to make his own meals. Surrounded by Annie and Brent, Kieran reluctantly cooked. Regardless of how it looked, I tried to eat the meal he prepared. However, due to my morning sickness, I couldn't finish it. Kieran sighed dramatically at the sight of the leftover food.
"I went through the trouble of making this, and this is what I get? If it's too awful to eat, just say so."
After dropping this sarcastic remark, Kieran left the house. He returned an hour later. From that point on, Kieran completely stopped doing any housework or childcare. His excuse was that his efforts were a waste of goodwill. Unashamedly, on his days off, he started fishing as a hobby. On weekdays, he used work and socializing at work events as excuses to go to bars, coming home late. There were days when I didn't even see Kieran's face. I apologized multiple times about the meal issue and asked for his help around the house. Hoping he'd come home earlier on weekdays and spend some weekends at home was a modest request, I thought. I just wanted him to spend a little time with the twins. But Kieran's response was unbelievable.
"You've been raising the twins for 2 years. You must be used to it by now."
With that, he'd leave for fishing. And
"This is your second pregnancy, and it's just one baby this time. There's nothing I can do."
He'd even say things like that. The twins, now 2 years old, haven't warmed up to Kieran at all, perhaps due to his indifferent attitude. In fact, they seem to dislike being around Kieran. They'd even start to cry if he just walked by. What I regret is wondering why I got pregnant with a third child. Perhaps I was fooled by Kieran's occasional whims of kindness. It's regrettable, but there's nothing I can do about it now. The baby growing inside me isn't to blame. Despite my frustrations, my pregnancy was progressing smoothly, and I was nearing full term. Like last time, I was scheduled for a cesarean section. The preparations for hospitalization weren't an issue, thanks to my previous experience. However, the due date being right after Christmas meant a busy holiday season. There would be a big Christmas party at the in-laws, which I'd likely miss this year. The biggest concern for this birth was Kieran. Now, there was the added responsibility of taking care of the twins. I needed Kieran's help. But I knew it was too much to ask for him to take time off work for the birth. So, to compromise, I asked if he could at least take care of the kids after work. His response was cold and devoid of kindness, saying he couldn't make such a promise. Then, Kieran said something even worse.
"It's embarrassing for a man to take time off work for his wife's birth. It makes me look like a useless husband who's henpecked by his wife. Unable to hold back any longer, I was about to retort when Kieran demanded food. His words immediately drained my will to argue. He continued to complain during the meal, upset by my request. By the age of 2, they should be able to eat by themselves. They might be able to eat, but they certainly can't cook. Kieran lacks the quality of thoughtfulness. Irritated, I couldn't help but respond. Then you should be able to do more than a 2-year-old. Show them how it's done. Unfazed by my sarcasm, Kieran said something even more outrageous. I'm fine. You all live off my earnings. How does that logic even work? Kieran's argument is far too flawed. Up until my hospitalization, he repeatedly reminded me that he was the one providing for me. I never intended to quit my job. It was Kieran who insisted I leave work to focus on household duties after we got married. Each time he says I'm providing for the family, I think to myself, you have no right to say that. With all these frustrations, the week of my hospitalization arrived. Then, Kieran made another insensitive comment. Make sure you attend the Christmas party. I couldn't understand why he would say such a thing. He was worried it would look bad if the eldest son of the family with direct lineage to respected ancestry attended alone. He had no understanding of the pain and risks involved in giving birth. Childbirth is a life-threatening endeavor. Kieran continued with unbelievable remarks. Why should I be the only one to attend? Who's going to do the cooking and serve the drinks? Was he mistaking me for a servant or a housekeeper? It was unthinkable to risk my life for the sake of Kieran's pride. It's astonishing what Kieran can come up with. Kieran and I repeatedly had intense exchanges of come and no, it's impossible. In the end, Brent talked to Kieran, and it was decided that I wouldn't attend. As Christmas approached, Kieran remained sullen, and it was the day before my hospitalization. Unfortunately, it also happened to be the day of the Christmas party. On the day of the Christmas party, I was experiencing some abdominal discomfort and was lying down beside the twins. Suddenly, I realized Kieran was standing there. Groggily, I looked up at Kieran. Today, we're having a Christmas party with 20 family members. Make sure you don't embarrass me. I wonder what Kieran is saying. I was filled with confusion at Kieran's words. The party was supposed to be at Tommy's house. Kieran sat down and shook my shoulder. He was demanding a meal for 20 people and desserts that the ladies would enjoy. It seemed Kieran had unilaterally decided to host the Christmas party at our house. Brent, Annie, and the rest of the family had been considerate about the twins and my pregnancy. I couldn't understand why suddenly 20 people were expected today. I hadn't noticed, but there were missed calls from Annie and Brent on my mobile phone. I was scheduled for hospitalization tomorrow. Labor could start at any time now. It was absolutely impossible to entertain 20 relatives under these circumstances. I told Kieran it was unreasonable to spring this on me suddenly. At the expense of paying a little more, couldn't we arrange for a catering service? I even humbly suggested. However, Kieran angrily raised his voice, insisting the party be at our house. Are you trying to shame me? As the wife of the eldest son of a family with direct lineage to respected ancestry, you should maintain your dignity. Kieran was imposing his selfish demands, continuing with outdated views that a wife should silently obey her husband. I lost the energy to argue back. When I fell silent, Kieran seemed to take it as agreement, smiling smugly. He then announced he was going to pick up the relatives and told me to prepare for the party before leaving. Given how everything was arranged, I couldn't possibly refuse. It would inconvenience all the relatives. With that thought in mind, I began to get ready, despite my large belly. I texted Kieran to let him know that going shopping was out of the question and I'd have to make do with what we had. I had stocked up on groceries considering my upcoming hospital stay, so using them up wouldn't be an issue. Despite the discomfort from my tight belly, I managed to prepare the meals. We were short on drinks, so I decided to order them and get it delivered. Just as I finished all the preparations, Kieran texted to say he was on his way home.
In just 2 hours, I had prepared the food and drinks. I wished I could pat myself on the back. The twins were getting sleepy, so I put them to bed in another room. Soon, I heard the front door open and lively voices. I went to greet everyone. Annie and Brent expressed their concern, asking me if I was okay. The call earlier was probably made out of concern for me. I could only respond with a vague smile and tried to brush it off. The living and dining areas were packed with 20 guests, and the Christmas party began. I was so busy serving food and drinks that I didn't have a moment to sit down. Everyone kept asking if I was okay, but I just laughed it off. Kieran, on the other hand, was in a good mood, boasting about my resilience. However, Brent, Annie, and Tommy looked worried. Standing continuously while preparing and moving around to pour drinks made the tightness in my abdomen increasingly unbearable. Eventually, I excused myself to check on the children, using it as a reason to leave the room. Watching the twins sleep, I too fell asleep. Sometime later, what felt like tightness turned into pain. Not wanting to worry anyone, I covered my mouth with my hands. The pain in my belly grew sharper and more intense. It had been 3 hours since Kieran sprung the Christmas party on me. As I endured the pain, suddenly the door opened. And there stood Tommy, seemingly having mistaken the room for the bathroom.
Sorry, I mistook this for the bathroom.
Saying this, Tommy closed the door and hurried away. Soon after, Brent and Annie arrived. Seeing me clutching my stomach and breathing heavily, they looked furious. The next moment, Annie shouted for Kieran and stormed back into the living room. I weakly stood up and returned to the living room as well. There, I saw Brent grabbing Kieran by the collar, and the next moment, a loud slap echoed through the room. Kieran's cheeks are turning red. Brent slapped Kieran on the cheek. Brent's eyes were sharp, and his usually gentle face looked demonic. Even I, who wasn't being scolded, flinched in fear. Kieran, shocked, was frozen in place.
What the hell are you doing?
Kieran flinched at Brent's loud voice. The relatives who had been enjoying their drinks fell silent and turned to look at Kieran.
Do you understand what condition Emma is in?
Annie glared at Kieran with a demonic intensity. One of the relatives noticed me and offered me a seat on the sofa. Words of anger were directed at Kieran from the other family members. You said the birth was still far off, but she's about to give birth, isn't she? I thought you said she was in the stable period, someone commented. It seemed Kieran had convinced the relatives that my delivery was still far off. He had told Brent and Annie that there were no signs of labor yet, which is why my hospitalization was postponed. Disdain filled the room as everyone started looking at Kieran with contempt. Relatives with children around the twins' age expressed their disbelief. Women were saying things like, "I can't believe this. If I were in her shoes, it would be unforgivable. What a terrible husband." There were also apologetic voices saying they were sorry for not knowing, feeling deceived by Kieran. The atmosphere was far from festive, resembling more of a funeral. Unable to withstand the mood, Kieran started making strained excuses.
She's always making excuses about taking care of the twins or being pregnant, or saying it's too close to the delivery to do any housework.
Everyone turned their attention to Kieran, wondering what he was trying to say.
That's why I made her prepare food for 20 people today, and even serve drinks.
I couldn't make sense of his words. And I'm sure everyone else was even more bewildered. Yet, Kieran continued.
She hasn't done anything up until now. This is hardly enough to make up for it.
The revelation that he made me cook for 20 people caused an uproar among the guests. Kieran, faced with their condemnation, began to sweat. A female relative suggested they disband immediately, and people started to clean up. The twins' crying could be heard from the back. Brent and Annie went to check on them. Tommy, who has a child about the same age as the twins, looked at Kieran with disdain.
That's despicable,
Tommy murmured quietly. Kieran was belittled by everyone as both a husband and a father, shrinking smaller in their presence. His usually assertive and arrogant demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my belly. The intervals between the pains seemed to be getting shorter. It was likely that labor has started. I tried to speak to Kieran, who was being scolded and had shrunk down. But he was unresponsive in shock. Someone asked if they should call the hospital for me, and I nodded slightly. Another person handed me a phone. And when I called the hospital, they told me to come in immediately. I announced to everyone that I was heading to the hospital and tried to stand up, but I couldn't get up. Tommy suggested calling an ambulance, and at that, Kieran finally reacted.
If you're calling an ambulance, tell them not to use the siren. It'd be embarrassing if the neighbors found out.
I couldn't believe Kieran was more concerned about appearances than my condition. Amidst the stunned silence of everyone, Kieran continued.
If you're going, go by yourself. It's your fault the mood was killed anyway.
It wasn't my fault at all, it was due to Kieran's lies. Everyone must be thinking the same. Amid the astonishment of everyone present, another loud sound was heard. Before anyone realized, Annie, who had returned, slapped Kieran on the cheek. Kieran clutched his face, tears welling up in his eyes.
I never thought you could be so morally corrupt. Giving birth is a matter of life and death.
Standing behind Annie, Brent was holding the twins, one in each arm.
The pain Emma has endured is nothing compared to this.
Brent, too, seemed furious, his arms trembling as he carefully placed the twins on the floor.
It's not my fault. I'm the one providing for everyone here.
Kieran insisted that I was to blame for embarrassing him in front of everyone and that he was faultless. Even in such a moment, Kieran's sense of elitism was evident. Naturally, no one sympathized with Kieran. My Sael, Caitlin offered to drive since she hadn't been drinking, raising her hand. The room erupted in cheers. The decision was made for Caitlin to drive our car, and everyone quickly started moving. Some to fetch my hospital bag from the bedroom, as directed by Annie, and others to tidy up, with Brent collecting the empty dishes. Kieran alone, rubbing his slapped cheek, was fuming, muttering that if it weren't for Dad and Mom, he'd be pressing charges. Perhaps embarrassed and his pride wounded, Kieran's face turned beet red. Moreover, even his ears turned red, indicating he must have felt quite humiliated. The commotion woke the twins, who started crying loudly. With the women busy tidying up, the men took turns trying to soothe the twins. Kieran didn't lift a finger to help. And everyone else seemed to have given up on him. At that moment, I felt utterly fed up with Kieran. I honestly thought I no longer needed such a useless partner. It was Tommy who stepped in to entertain the twins, saying he often played with his own kids and started playing with them. He said that he's used to playing with his kids at home, so you can leave it to me. With that, he started playing with the twins. With support, I stood up and informed him that there were toys in the children's room and that the kids had no food allergies. I also told them to feel free to use any food from the fridge. Kieran kept muttering to himself that he wasn't wrong until the end, but I ignored him and headed for the entrance. Caitlin then drove me to the hospital in our car. Upon arrival, a nurse immediately called for a doctor, who took me to the delivery room. It seemed I was close to giving birth, given the intervals of my contractions. Sure enough, as soon as I was on the delivery table, I gave birth. It was a relief that it was an easy delivery. However, the one who I truly felt sorry for was Caitlin. Unable to leave, she ended up having to stay until the next morning. The day after I safely gave birth, Annie and Brent came to the hospital with the twins. After the incident, Kieran had sulked in a corner of the room, drinking beer from a can. Brent took Kieran to the bedroom, not wanting the children to see their father being scolded. Out of the twins' hearing, Brent reportedly scolded Kieran all night long. Kieran seemed to have lost all his spirit. Brent shared yesterday's events with a wry smile. Eventually, Kieran came to my hospital room. In front of Brent and Annie, he was meek and quietly apologized for his actions the day before. The impact of being hit by both Brent and Annie seemed to have deeply affected him. They kindly left me alone with Kieran. But his attitude changed immediately.
It's your fault I got hit by Dad and Mom.
He went on to complain about my shortcomings and lack of consideration. At that point, I was utterly fed up with Kieran. I firmly decided to divorce him then. Despite the apprehension of becoming a single mother with 3 children, I knew I couldn't stay with Kieran any longer. Without hesitation, I pressed the nurse call button. A nurse came right away. And soon after, Brent and Annie returned to the room, wondering what was happening.
This man is a stranger to me.
Please ask him to leave. The nurse looked bewildered, but Annie seemed to understand. She promptly escorted Kieran out of the room. With Kieran in tow, Brent and Annie left the hospital. As they were leaving, they mentioned that my parents would visit in the afternoon. True to Annie's words, my parents arrived in the afternoon. I shared the events of the previous day and my decision to divorce Kieran with them. My parents initially thought Kieran had been unfaithful when they heard about the divorce from Annie. They had been under the impression that divorce always involved infidelity. They couldn't have imagined that a heavily pregnant woman was forced by her husband to prepare for and serve at a Christmas party. I took my time, explaining the circumstances to my parents intermittently. Not only did I talk about being made to prepare meals for 20 people and being forced to serve drinks, but I also shared, through tears, how hard it had been and how much I had endured up until now. As they listened, my parents cried with me. By the end of our conversation, we were all smiling through our tears. My mom gently suggested I recuperate at their home after the hospital. I was discharged without issue and have been resting at my parents' house since. Regarding the divorce, Brent and Annie agreed there was no reason to oppose it. The only one who was vehemently against it was Kieran. He tried to contact me numerous times. But I blocked his calls and informed Brent and Annie not to let him contact me. Without me to serve almost as a servant, Kieran seemed to have lost his mental stability. Living alone, he couldn't keep the house tidy, and it became cluttered with trash. At work, he vented his frustration through power harassment, nearly facing disciplinary action from HR. Despite this, his behavior persisted, extending even to clients and partners, eventually leading to his dismissal. By then, it seemed no one sympathized with him. Currently, Kieran is re-educating himself on human decency while working on the family farm. Kieran apparently often cries, saying that the home he shared with me was his oasis of peace. I heard all of this from Annie, who has been in touch with me. But for me, that home was nothing but a desert. With Brent and Annie's help, my divorce from Kieran was finalized smoothly. The house we lived in was sold, and I received the entire sum from the sale as compensation in the divorce settlement. I decided to live with my parents. I still keep in touch with Brent, Annie, and Tommy. Sometimes, the twins ask to see Caitlin and Tommy, who happily play with them. For Brent and Annie, the twins are still their grandchildren. They visit whenever they can, enjoying their time with all 3 kids, who affectionately call them Grandpa and Grandma. The children have also grown fond of Grandpa and Grandma. Looking back, if it weren't for that Christmas party, I might not have made it to the hospital. Kieran alone couldn't have managed both the hospital trip and caring for the twins. In a way, that incident helped me come to terms with my situation with Kieran. It's odd, but I find myself grateful to Kieran for hosting that Christmas party at our home. Life is unpredictable. I'll never forget the kindness of those who helped me during that time. With my 3 children, I aim to find even greater happiness and hope to offer help to others in return. Our daughter Ashley's delivery went smoothly, and we had just returned home that day. Right then, a gift arrived from Ashley's husband, Henry, who couldn't be there for the birth due to work commitments. Though they had been in touch, Ashley clearly missed Henry and eagerly received the package, delighted.
Everyone, please enjoy this. I wonder what he sent. Knowing Henry, it must be something I love.
Ashley opened the package with pure joy. However, her joy quickly faded as her complexion turned pale upon opening it. As Ashley suddenly fell silent, we all peered into the package. Inside was just a dirty rag. and within, a note simply stating, "Don't come back."
What is this? What does it mean?
What's this about? Did Henry really send us this? In stark contrast to our shock, my husband, Kevin, visibly angry, threw the rag to the floor. It must be some mistake. It had to be. Surely, this is some kind of mistake. Should we contact Henry? I gently asked the clearly distraught Ashley, who had become silent and looked down, saying nothing more. This was too much for Ashley, who had just gone through childbirth. I couldn't bear to see her so exhausted and upset. But then, an unexpected turn of events was about to unfold. Kevin came home from work earlier than usual, with a somewhat relieved expression. Before I could ask what happened, Kevin spoke. With a deep breath, he grimaced, bit his lip in frustration, and then announced, "It appears that was meant as a warning. My name is Heather. I'm a 57-year-old and I'm supporting my fate as a housewife. Growing up, I was always looking up to my dad, an elite banker. During my school years, I had to be at the top of my class, or Dad would scold me, so my days were filled with nothing but study. Lacking time to play with friends, I led a solitary life at school. Thus, I enrolled in a prestigious university, as Dad suggested. If my grades fell, Dad would threaten not to pay my tuition. However, as I was preparing to find a job, Dad passed away in a car accident. The sudden loss left me utterly lost. Mom grieved daily over Dad's sudden absence. To reassure her, I took a job at a bank. Though Dad was strict, I realized that it was thanks to him I had been so dedicated to my studies. Grateful for this, I was happy to work at the bank, and Mom was overjoyed that I followed in Dad's footsteps. That's where I met someone. Most of my colleagues quickly married and left the job. In our 20s, only women with no desire to marry or those like me, completely dedicated to their work, remained. The bank was a busy place, making it hard to blend in with others around. Even though I was capable at my job, my inability to marry was mocked by my boss. Still, I diligently applied what I had studied in college to my work. Then, one day, after years of this routine, I was introduced to a man by my boss. That man was my husband, Kevin. In the company, he was known as a competent worker, trusted by our boss, and beloved by his colleagues. Being introduced to Kevin, who was cheerful and good-natured, took me by surprise initially. Though we had worked together on several occasions, our interactions had been limited to work-related conversations. The idea of going on a date with him was beyond my expectations. Yet, I found myself accepting his invitation to dine out. Kevin, with his constant SE, turned out to be a very kind and considerate person. Soon after, our relationship progressed swiftly towards marriage. I felt confident that with him, we could build a happy family. Kevin was indeed a wonderful person. Once we decided to marry, we bought a house and embarked on a new life together. Thanks to Kevin's stable income, I left my job to become a housewife. Both of us wanted children eventually. However, reality proved to be harsh, and despite the passage of time, we remained childless. 3 years into our marriage, I was diagnosed with a condition that made it difficult to conceive. The thought that I was the reason we couldn't have children was devastating. But Kevin was there to encourage me, insisting we face the challenge together. With his support, I began fertility treatments. Years passed without success, but finally, after 5 years, our long-awaited wish was granted, and I became pregnant. We were overjoyed at the news of our forthcoming child. Months passed and I gave birth to our beloved daughter. Kevin adored her even more than I did. Once Ashley was born, Kevin made it a point to leave work early, skipping company dinners to come home. Raised with our undivided love, Ashley grew into a very kind child. She was earnest and kind, always sing, just like Kevin. Time flew, and before we knew it, Ashley was a college student. Supporting her desire to help others, we encouraged her as she pursued her studies with enthusiasm. As graduation approached, Ashley expressed her wish to work in the city. While I supported her, Kevin found the idea of her moving away difficult to accept. It's natural for parents to worry about their children. But we encouraged her, and Ashley moved to the city. Busy with her job, she seldom returned home, which initially left us feeling lonely. However, we wholeheartedly supported Ashley's dreams. Years went by, and Ashley, now 29, had apparently been promoted at work. Lately, my only joy has been our monthly calls with Ashley.
Mom, thanks for always sending packages.
It's no problem.
How's work going? Are you keeping well? Everything okay?
Ashley would always laugh off my worries, seeming a bit troubled by my concern.
Mom, you worry too much. I'm 29 now. You don't need to worry so much.
But I hardly get to see you, Ashley. It's natural for a parent to worry. Worrying was, after all, a natural thing.
But you don't need to worry about me anymore.
Despite my concerns, Ashley's voice was full of excitement. What could she mean? Then, taking a deep breath as if bracing herself, Ashley said,
I have someone I want you and Dad to meet.
I couldn't hide my surprise at Ashley's words, as she had never introduced us to anyone before.
Who is it?
Tell me.
It's a secret until we meet.
Ashley, laughing childishly, sounded a bit excited as she hung up. A few days later, Ashley brought a tall man in a suit to meet us. I was surprised, but Kevin, who adores Ashley, was even more so. The idea of Ashley bringing home a boyfriend seemed to shock him.
I never thought she'd actually bring someone home. She used to say she'd marry me when she was little. Ashley is an adult. It's not strange for her to have a boyfriend.
Despite my efforts to reassure Kevin, accepting the reality of his beloved Ashley having a boyfriend was hard for him. Sitting close to the man, Ashley introduced him with a happy essay.
This is Henry. He works in landscaping.
I'm Henry.
I'm in a committed relationship with Ashley. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Henry seemed sincere and serious, and although Kevin was initially wary, they gradually warmed up to each other. Henry grew up in a home without a father after his parents divorced. He had difficulty fitting in and finding opportunities to meet people due to his busy work life. But then he met Ashley. They were introduced by a mutual acquaintance and recently started dating. Ashley was there for Henry, offering support and kindness during tough times at work. With Ashley's support, Henry found himself more engaged in his work than ever before.
All thanks to Ashley. She's my savior.
Hearing Henry speak so fondly, I was on the verge of tears as a parent. To think that he cherished Ashley so much. Kevin was moved by Henry's words too, and the two of them became close enough to chat about trivial matters. I was convinced that Henry was someone we could entrust our precious Ashley to. The impression of Henry was that good. I was sure that a marriage proposal was on the horizon. Ashley and Henry seemed to trust each other that much. But then, about 6 months later, something unimaginable happened. As usual, I had sent Kevin off to work and was dedicating myself to household chores. When suddenly, my mobile phone rang. Picking up, curious, it was Ashley. A wave of anxiety washed over me, wondering what could have happened.
Ashley, what's up? Calling in the middle of the day like this?
Normally, she would be at work at this time. Yet, Ashley, with a voice not her usual bright self but somewhat darker, said, I took some leave.
Took leave? Are you not feeling well? What happened?
Ashley seemed hesitant to talk. Well, there's something I need to talk about. Usually, she would be bright and talk about Henry or her job. But today, her voice was devoid of cheer, sounding somewhat listless. Ashley started talking about something that seemed to be troubling her. Apparently, things weren't going well with Henry's mom.
What do you mean? Didn't you say you went out to eat with her before?
There hadn't been such issues when they first started dating. I had heard they were getting along well with Henry's mom. Yet, what could have happened in just 6 months? I asked Ashley what went wrong. The truth is, things have never really been good with Henry's mom. She had been trying not to worry us. I wished she had talked to us sooner. But maybe Ashley found it difficult to consult us. Gently asking what happened, Ashley let out a small sigh. Recently, Henry and I discussed about marriage. Considering our ages, it was time for us to think, she said. I suddenly remembered a call from Ashley a few days ago. She had mentioned then that they were talking about their future. But at that time, her voice was brighter, and she seemed happy talking about it. But it seems that wasn't the case in reality. Ashley mentioned that Henry's mom, Nicole, was being harsh towards her. She had visited Nicole's house several times, but each time she was met with a cold attitude from Nicole. Why would she act like that? Ashley pondered over this and even discussed it with Henry. Henry suggested that Nicole might still be traumatized from when Henry's dad had an affair and left the home during his childhood. Nicole must have felt deep sorrow then and decided to raise Henry alone. I heard that she raised Henry by herself, cherishing him greatly, especially since Henry's grandparents had already passed away. Even now, Nicole supposedly calls Henry several times a week. I can somewhat understand her feelings. Any parent would worry about their precious child. But that doesn't justify her attitude towards Ashley. When asked if she did something wrong, Ashley could only say she didn't know. With marriage talks with Henry underway, it seems Ashley wants to avoid worsening her relationship with Nicole. Ashley said this, looking very downhearted. It was the first time I saw Ashley so troubled. I told her that perhaps she should talk it over with Henry. Though Ashley's voice was somber, sharing her concerns seemed to lighten her heart. She said she would discuss it thoroughly with Henry and try to persuade Nicole to understand. Despite some apprehension, I decided to leave it to Ashley. Then, 9 months later, I received a call from Ashley, her voice bright.
Henry proposed to me.
She reported her engagement with a joy I hadn't heard before. While I was delighted with the sudden engagement news, Ashley's previous concerns came to mind. When Ashley happily shared her engagement news, I asked about Nicole. Then, Ashley's previously bright voice turned a bit somber as she began to speak. Apparently, Nicole, who dotes on Henry, had not approved of the marriage. Moreover, the engagement announcement seemed to have made Nicole colder towards Ashley. It seemed Nicole felt like Ashley was taking Henry away from her, and despite Henry's attempts to persuade her, it didn't go well. After much deliberation, they decided to go ahead with the marriage despite Nicole's objections. On one hand, I was upset at Nicole for treating Ashley harshly. On the other hand, I felt helpless about not being able to say anything strong to the people Ashley would be dealing with. Reluctantly, I told Ashley, "Let me know immediately if anything happens." They had decided on their new home and were proceeding with the moving arrangements. I wholeheartedly congratulated Ashley and Henry. But then, not long after, Ashley and Henry came to our house saying they had something to discuss.
What's happened?
Kevin asked anxiously. The two exchanged glances and then said happily,
I'm going to be a mom.
She showed us an ultrasound photo with a happy expression. There, a still tiny baby was pictured. We were overjoyed, especially Kevin, who was more excited than anyone about the grandchild's arrival.
I can't believe we're going to have a grandchild. There's nothing happier than this. You're exaggerating. I haven't even fully realized it yet.
Ashley, blushing with a shy SA, made me suddenly think of something. It was about Nicole. If she hadn't even accepted their marriage, what would she say upon finding out about the pregnancy? When I asked Ashley about it, Henry, with a stern look, said,
"I'll try to convince Mom again."
Apparently, Nicole became even harsher towards Ashley after their marriage, and when they announced the pregnancy, she yelled,
"Why would you have a child so quickly? That's strange, isn't it? You must have lured Henry into marrying you,"
Nicole accused. Ashley and Henry insisted that wasn't true, but Nicole wouldn't listen, Ashley said sadly. Henry told Nicole there was no need to be so angry, but she initially wouldn't accept it. However, worried that the constant complaints would burden pregnant Ashley, Henry persuaded Nicole several times, explaining the accusations were baseless. For now, Nicole seems somewhat convinced, but she still harshly blames Ashley.
"I can't believe this is happening to you guys. But remember, we are here for you both. Give birth to your child in peace." That's right. There's nothing happier than Ashley being pregnant.
Encouraged by our strong words, Ashley and Henry nodded with teary eyes. I had heard about mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts, but never imagined Ashley would experience it. And it was unforgivable that Nicole complained for such strange reasons. But Ashley's trials didn't end there. Since becoming pregnant, Ashley's morning sickness worsened, and she started missing work. I visited Ashley several times and cooked meals for her. But her health didn't improve, and she ended up bedridden, according to Henry. I kept worrying and sending meals to Henry, but he refused to accept more, not wanting to worry us. Amid growing anxiety, several months after the pregnancy announcement, I received an early morning call. It was from Ashley, and I rushed to answer, asking,
"What's wrong, Ashley?"
Through sobs, Ashley's voice came through. Confused, I listened as she quietly said,
"I want to go back home to give birth."
Feeling uneasy, I asked why. It seemed Nicole was the cause. Nicole had been calling daily, demanding to divorce her son. She yelled not to have the child, pushing Ashley to her mental limit.
"Why didn't you talk to us sooner?"
I asked Ashley, who sobbed through her explanation. It appears she had been pretending to be upbeat not to worry us. Tears overflowed from my eyes too. I woke Kevin to explain the situation. Realizing the gravity, Kevin sprang up, insisting we pick up Ashley immediately. After telling Ashley our plan, she responded in a weak voice. Henry, too, was exhausted. I suggested they both stay with us for a while. However, while Ashley was willing to accept, Henry rejected the proposal. Henry explained that due to work commitments, he simply couldn't leave. Reluctantly, it was decided that Ashley would return to our home, and about an hour after the call, I went to pick her up. Upon arrival at home, there was Ashley, visibly exhausted. She seemed to be mentally drained, clearly not her usual self. I instinctively hugged Ashley tightly.
"I'm sorry, I can't get away from work. If anything happens, please call me right away. I'll come as soon as I can,"
Henry said, hugging Ashley with a look of concern. Seeing how much they loved each other made my heart ache. To think they were being put through so much distress. I felt a surge of anger towards Nicole. From that day on, Ashley began living with us, away from Henry. Compared to her previous state, she seemed to be slowly recovering. Though there were times she wasn't feeling well, seeing Ashley become a bit brighter was reassuring. A few months after moving in with us, Ashley safely gave birth to the child. Kevin and I were moved to tears with joy at the birth of our adorable grandchild.
It reminds me of when Ashley was born. It's a moment too precious to forget, such a joyful event.
Kevin and I looked at each other, reminiscing about the time when Ashley was born. Ashley, blushing with embarrassment, immediately called Henry. She had informed Henry when she went into labor, but he couldn't make it in time. Henry was unable to attend the birth, but Ashley joyfully informed him of their child's arrival. However, Ashley's expression darkened after making the call. She looked dejected after hanging up.
"What's wrong?"
I asked Ashley.
"He can't come right away. But he said he's sending a gift, something I like," she said.
Initially, Ashley was downcast, but she soon regained some of her spirits. It seems Henry was concerned about not being able to attend the birth and wanted to cheer Ashley up. He apologetically mentioned sending Ashley her favorite things. However, we suddenly felt something off about Henry. Even if he was busy with work, he should have made it a priority to be there for the birth of his child. This prioritization of work over childbirth made us slightly feel distrustful towards Henry. But since Ashley trusts him, we decided not to dwell on it further. Then, on the day Ashley returned from the hospital after giving birth, a gift from Henry arrived. Though they had been in touch, Ashley seemed sad about not being able to see Henry. Ashley was very pleased to receive the package.
"Let's all enjoy this. I wonder what he sent. Knowing Henry, it must be something I love,"
Ashley said, opening the package with visible happiness. However, her joy quickly faded as her complexion turned pale upon opening it. As Ashley became suddenly quiet, we too looked inside the package. Inside was just a dirty rag. And within, a note simply stating, "Don't come back."
"What is this? What does it mean?"
"What's this? Did Henry really send us this?" Contrary to our shock, Kevin, visibly angry, threw the rag to the floor. "It must be some kind of mistake."
"Surely, this is some kind of mistake. This doesn't make sense. Should we contact Henry?"
I gently asked Ashley, who had become silent and looked down, saying nothing more. However, Ashley remained silent, her face downturned, not speaking anymore. We focused on comforting Ashley, who was deeply distressed. To think she had to face this treatment after just giving birth. We couldn't bear to see Ashley so worn out. But then, an unexpected event occurred. Kevin came home from work earlier than usual, with a somewhat relieved look on his face. Before I could ask what happened, Kevin began to speak.
"I contacted Nicole. It seems that was meant as a warning."
I was shocked at Kevin's words, uttered with a heavy sigh. It turns out the perpetrator of the package was not Henry, but Nicole. Kevin had tried to reach out to Henry on the day the package arrived, but got no response. With no other choice, Kevin contacted Nicole and confronted her. He couldn't stand to see Ashley sad any longer. Nicole confessed to taking a package meant for Ashley from busy Henry, swapping it with a dirty rag, and sending it. While shocked at such an unexpected revelation, I couldn't understand why she would do such a thing. However, Kevin's expression remained stern.
"Nicole was trying to protect Ashley by being harsh on her all this time."
Upon being pressed, Nicole confessed everything to Kevin. Nicole confessed that she had once heard from a drunken Henry about embezzling company funds. With the issue unresolved and Ashley's marriage to Henry hastily decided, Nicole panicked. To prevent Ashley from getting involved in any trouble, Nicole admitted to being harsh towards her. It was Nicole's way of advising Ashley to stay away from Henry. The shock left us speechless. But we couldn't let Ashley continue to be saddened by this. We wanted to push for a divorce immediately, but we knew neither Ashley nor Henry would agree. So, we took immediate action. First, we contacted Nicole. She seemed surprised to hear from us, but quickly apologized.
I was wrong. I'm truly sorry for everything.
While it was difficult to forgive Nicole for her weak apology to Ashley, we requested her cooperation to get Henry to confess. Nicole hesitated for a moment, stumbling over her words, but then agreed, acknowledging that it couldn't be overlooked. We decided to tell a grieving Ashley everything about Henry. We shared everything Nicole had told us, explaining that it was all done to protect Ashley. Initially, Ashley seemed incredulous, but she appeared to trust our words eventually. Shortly after giving birth, we finally received a call from Henry, who had not once called or shown concern for Ashley since the birth. There was no way Kevin and I could forgive that. We were infuriated by the fact that he hadn't attended the birth nor had he made any contact after the birth.
Is Ashley okay? Now that work has calmed down, I should be able to stay in touch, Henry said, seemingly unconcerned.
Anger welled up at Henry's indifferent demeanor as he spoke. I briefly updated him on Ashley's condition and then quickly ended the call. To think Henry had deceived Ashley, who was raising a child on her own, and embezzled company money. We could no longer forgive Henry. A few days later, Nicole provided us with a recording of Henry's confession. His voice on the recording showed no remorse, speaking as if the matter was already resolved. He seemed utterly unconcerned about embezzling company funds and even mocked the deception of Ashley. It's all over now, isn't it?
I've got a beautiful woman and have played the part of a good husband, he said.
To think he thought of Ashley in such a way. With all the evidence compiled, I handed it over to Ashley. Ashley seemed resolved, initially saddened but unwilling to let her child be saddened, and sent the recording to Henry's company. It was 3 days later when Henry, unaware of these events, contacted Ashley. Suddenly, Ashley's mobile phone began to ring. There were multiple incoming calls from Henry. Ashley, now a protective mother, answered the phone with a strong stance.
What? I'm busy, you know. What's this about? Explain yourself. Why do you know about the embezzlement?
Henry's voice roared through the phone. Kevin frowned at Henry's blatant anger. Henry's voice grew even louder.
I'll be fired if this continues. Can't you, as my wife, speak to the company for me?
It appears the company's president had seen the evidence Ashley sent, leading to Henry's dismissal and a demand for compensation. Moreover, the company threatened to report him to the police if he didn't pay the damages. Henry must have contacted Ashley in a panic. Ashley sighed heavily at Henry's selfishness.
That's your own fault, isn't it? I don't know anything about that,
she responded dismissively. Henry began to show his irritation. The sound of something being thrown could be heard over the phone.
What's with that attitude? Acting all high and mighty when you don't even earn money.
I was stunned to hear such unprecedented shouts through the phone. To think such a person had been close to Ashley. But then, Kevin, who was right beside me, became furious and yelled back at Henry on the phone.
Enough is enough. Don't drag Ashley into this. This is all you're doing, yet you blame others.
It was rare for the usually de-mannered Kevin to get angry. But his voice was filled with a cold fury I had never heard before. Henry's voice trembled in response.
Well, there's a reason for this. It's not all my fault, you see.
Kevin raised his voice even more.
You've caused enough trouble for the company that's been good to you. Pay the compensation or I'll report you to the police myself.
Henry, perhaps panicked by Kevin's threat, promised to pay the compensation. But that was not enough to appease Kevin.
I can't leave Ashley with a criminal like you. We'll be pursuing a divorce.
Henry seemed not to expect such a reaction and tried to calm the situation with a but the phone was hung up before he could finish.
Wait a minute.
Later, Henry promised to pay the compensation in one lump sum to his company. Thanks to this, the matter didn't escalate to police involvement, and he was only dismissed from his company. Subsequently, Ashley and Henry quickly proceeded with their divorce. After that, there was no further contact from Henry. Following this incident, Nicole reflected on her son's failings and lack of integrity, offering us an apology. We then ceased all contact with Nicole and had no further dealings with her. Meanwhile, Ashley, along with Kevin and I, began to raise her child together. An old friend of Ashley's from the neighborhood returned to the area, and they started seeing each other frequently, along with the child. They spent holidays together like a real fae, and he seemed to cherish Ashley deeply. He always seems to be there for Ashley, actively participating in parenting. He has come to greet Kevin and I several times, and he's a very pleasant person. The child seems to have grown fond of him too, and judging by their interactions, remarriage might be happening soon. Seeing Ashley and our grandchild sing happily together has given us great peace of mind. My name is Mary. I'm 28 years old. After graduating from college with a degree in life design, I've been working at a design company for 5 years. I have a partner and we recently had a wedding. My partner's name is Kevin. Kevin works in sales at an advertising agency. He's kind and trustworthy. We'd been gradually preparing for our wedding, amidst our work and daily lives. Both of us are only children, and our parents were eagerly looking forward to our marriage. But there's this unbelievable person who tried to ruin our wedding. This time, I want to talk about that person, Rory, a colleague of Kevin's at work. It was a few months after Kevin and I got engaged and had sent out our wedding invitations. I was invited to a cafe by my college friend, Kate. It's been a while, Kate. What did you want to talk about? Mary, what should I do? My boyfriend, he broke off our engagement.
Broke off the engagement? What do you mean?
Asked by a coworker, Kate had reluctantly joined a party to make up numbers.
Just put in an appearance for a minute, and you can leave early.
She was told that.
I had kept declining again and again because I was engaged, but I couldn't refuse outright.
Kate didn't think she drank much, but she got quite drunk. Her memory was fuzzy, and next thing she knew, it was morning.
And then I was apparently assaulted while I was drunk and asleep. No way! By one of the men at the party!
Kate confided with tears streaming down her face. Then, she touched her belly. I was speechless. Kate had gotten pregnant that night at the party. She had maintained a chaste relationship with her fiancé. It definitely wasn't her fiancé's child. Kate couldn't keep it a secret and confessed everything honestly. Then, her fiancé exploded in anger. He scolded her for her careless behavior and called off their engagement. After telling me this, Kate broke down in tears.
What should I do? I'm so stupid. I never thought this would happen. Kate, it's not your fault. The man who assaulted a drunk woman is to blame. It's a crime.
We must make the man responsible face the consequences. We must never give up. I decided to be there for Kate, no matter what.
So, do you know who the guy is?
Yeah.
There were 3 men, but the most suspicious one is.
I was shocked to hear the name. There was someone with the same name among Kevin's colleagues. When I told Kevin about my conversation with Kate, he looked pained.
Rory! Damn it! What a terrible thing he's done. Is it really him? The Rory who's your colleague? Yeah. He was bragging a while back about sleeping with a woman from a trading company. We can't forgive this,
Kevin said, clenching his fists tightly. Rory worked in sales at the same advertising agency as Kevin, and he's the son of the executive director. His personality was frivolous and he was a bit of a show-off. He tended to get carried away and acted recklessly. Moreover, he lacked a sense of responsibility and tended to shift blame and escaped when things went south.
Someone else will clean up his mess, he thinks. He's the worst. He's even blamed me for his mistakes several times. Truly awful.
We must make Rory pay for what he did to Kate. In secret, we began to help Kate prepare to sue Rory. Then, a few days later, the day of my wedding with Kevin arrived. The issue with Kate was still unresolved, but the wedding couldn't be postponed. I did contact Kate to apologize.
I'm sorry, my friend is going through a tough time, and here I am getting married.
Don't worry about it. I'm sorry for canceling my attendance so suddenly. Kate congratulated me on my wedding multiple times. Determined to honor her feelings, I decided to make today's ceremony beautiful. But one thing bothered me. Rory, a colleague of the groom, was also there. I'm really sorry. If we didn't invite him, it would cause trouble later. It's okay. We can't help it. Let's make him pay for his crimes after this is over. Rory was making a scene, drinking more than enough welcome drinks. He was more conspicuous than us at our wedding reception. And it wasn't in a good way. His face was bright red. His eyes leered. And he wouldn't stop talking. His inner ugliness was all too apparent on the outside. This man ruined my dear friend's future. I wished he would just leave. But I couldn't say such a thing. I endured it, following Kevin's lead. All the while, Rory continued his commotion. As the reception progressed, it was time for the best man's speech. Suddenly, Rory enthusiastically raised his hand.
Hey, hey, hey! Let me as a colleague say a few words first.
It wasn't planned, but Kevin's dad allowed it, thinking it was a good opportunity. Kevin and I exchanged glances. We had a bad feeling. Rory, unsteady on his feet, went to the microphone and bowed. Then he grinned.
Actually, I have some unfortunate news for everyone here. Our groom, Kevin. You see, he once impregnated my girlfriend.
The banquet hall erupted into chaos. Everyone's attention turned to Kevin. I saw Kevin's mom faint in the family section of the groom's side. My relatives stood up one after another and demanding.
What do you mean? Explain this.
Kevin was cornered and visibly shaken. The staff was confused. Rory was laughing loudly. He clearly enjoying the turmoil he caused. I couldn't stand it anymore.
Enough is enough. What's fun about making up nonsense and troubling people? You're the one who assaulted my friend and got her pregnant. I know it. I will never forgive you for what you did to my friend, and we will definitely sue you.
My outburst suddenly quieted the hall. I borrowed a microphone from a nearby staff member and continued.
Recently, my friend was assaulted at a party and became pregnant against her will. She's in utter despair. The perpetrator of that assault is him, Rory. No, not true. Don't make up such nonsense. It's not a lie, we have evidence. We conducted a DNA test on the fetus. It didn't match with any man but you. What? When did they do such a test? Everything is almost ready for the lawsuit. Be prepared. Honestly, I didn't want to invite you here. Kevin and I struggled with it. But the incident came to light after we sent the invitations, so we endured it.
At the request, I passed the microphone to Kevin. He sighed deeply, glared at Rory, and said,
You recklessly ruined Mary and my reception. I'll never forget this grudge. You will pay for your crimes.
Now, all eyes in the hall were on Rory. Caught in his guilt, Rory started yelling pathetically.
Kevin, you're getting too big for your boots. It's your fault for getting married. You shouldn't have gotten married before me, someone like you.
Rory was subdued by security and escorted out of the venue. He continued to resist pathetically until the end. As order was restored, the reception resumed. Kevin's boss, Tom, addressed the situation.
I apologize for my subordinate's terrible behavior. He will be dealt with severely. His misconduct and lies have been a major issue within our company. As his superior, I deeply regret not guiding him properly.
Tom apologized. And then he esteered Kevin's honor. Meanwhile, Kevin's sincerity is well known in our company. Even when troubled by that man earlier, Kevin handled it calmly. His focus on maintaining harmony in the department, rather than his personal interests, is truly admirable. There aren't many men as trustworthy and promising as Kevin. Mary, you're lucky. You've found a wonderful partner.
I sincerely congratulate the two of you on your marriage.
Tom concluded. The hall erupted in applause. Then, relatives and friends came to congratulate us. Everyone apologized to Kevin, saying they were sorry for doubting him. Kevin just gave a wry smile. A warm atmosphere returned to the hall. If it weren't for that man, Kate could have enjoyed such happiness too. While enjoying the reception, my hatred for Rory deepened. Later, I heard Rory was hung out to dry at Kevin's company. Tom was really angry and explained everything at the executive meeting. The executive director, Rory's father, was present. He deeply apologized to the president and everyone in the meeting room.
Please allow me to apologize, as a father. My son has caused you all great inconvenience. I'm truly sorry. Dad! No, it's not like that. I didn't mean to. About the party, it was just the alcohol and an irresistible force. Shut up. I don't want to hear another word from you. I made a mistake in how I raised you. You're a burden to the company, a disgrace to our family. You're the blemish of my life.
Even after being disowned by his father, Rory continued his pathetic resistance. But his misconduct and foolishness were already well known to all. Not a single employee sided with Rory or tried to help him. Eventually, Rory chose to resign voluntarily. Everyone at work was relieved. Kevin told me that. It was truly pitiful to be rejoiced at one's departure. Naturally, no one attempted to organize a farewell party for Rory. Packing his belongings, Rory left the company with drooped his shoulders. There were developments in the assault case too. Kate's former fiancé filed a claim for damages against Rory. The cost of the engagement ring, the money paid to the venue, cancellation fees, and more. He had covered most of it. The claim for damages is quite substantial.
Kate, what about you? The Rory's lawyer offered a settlement, right?
I absolutely refuse to just take the money and end this.
He must atone for his crime.
Kate no longer had the baby in her womb. She had a miscarriage at 4 months. Likely it was due to the intense stress and sorrow she endured. The sad experience seemed to have made Kate stronger. The amount of damages demanded from Rory by Kate's ex-fiancé was around $30,000. Rory tried to borrow money from his parents, but they firmly refused. So, he had to cover it all with his savings and loans. Rory tried to find a new job but struggled to make it to the final interview.
His frivolous appearance must be getting in the way, Kevin speculated.
Recently, Rory has been working multiple part-time jobs just to earn his daily expenses. Most of the money he earns, however, goes towards paying off his debts. A few days later, I got a message from Kate saying she had filed a lawsuit against Rory. She was ready to fight, with her lawyer by her side. DNA tests and testimonies confirmed that Rory was undoubtedly the father of the child. Taking advantage of someone drunk and unconscious to commit a forceful act falls under the crime of sexual assault. The statutory penalty is a fixed-term imprisonment of at least 5 years. Unfortunately for Kate, Rory's lawyer was quite skilled. In the end, Rory was sentenced to 4 years in prison. As he was leaving the courtroom, he repeatedly apologized to Kate.
I was apologized to over and over, but I never thought of forgiving him.
That's right.
He should live the rest of his life atoning for his sins.
Rory's actions, driven by his desires, disrupted Kate's life. The extinguishing of a small life was not unrelated to him. The crime committed by Rory was not only taking the precious life of a fetus but also subjecting the mother to immense stress. Rory, who acted recklessly without thinking of the consequences, caused suffering to many. He should spend his entire life atoning for his sins. I strongly wished it. The 4 years without Rory seemed to bring calm to many. I heard Kate recently started a new relationship.
I told him everything. About being a victim of sexual crime, about the miscarriage. It was hard. But he said it must have been tough. I'll take care of everything.
It's wonderful.
Really wonderful that you found such a great person.
When I heard the story, I couldn't help but tear up myself. A person who knew about Kate's emotional scars and the details of the incident, yet still chooses to stay by her side. He seems to be a much more understanding and kinder man than her previous fiancé. In these past 4 years, Kevin and I also became parents. Our child is a boy, now a year and a half old. Kevin looks after him when I'm not around. Every day, we're fumbling through parenting, hustling, and bustling.
How about you, Mary? How's married life?
Is the baby cute?
Thanks to you, all is well. We fight sometimes, but our child is unconditionally adorable. I'm envious. I want a child soon too. I still think about the one I lost. Kate, don't blame yourself, okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm looking forward.
Someday, I want to welcome a child with my current partner. And this time, I want to love them with all my heart.
Kate's emotional wounds will probably never completely heal. But I'm sure the happy times ahead will heal her. Let's both keep pushing forward. That day, Kate and I waved goodbye to each other. One day, Kevin told me he had encountered Rory, who had been released from prison. When he was walking down the street during work, Rory approached him.
His hairstyle and look were different, but his eyes and way of speaking were the same.
Kevin said with a look of disgust. Apparently, Rory had asked him for money.
He's been going around asking acquaintances for money, even just $1. When he asked me if he managed to borrow any, I just replied, "Don't ask." Of course. No one would want to deal with him. Everyone knows about his crimes. What happened next? He started saying, "Why me?" So I scolded him. It's your own fault your life is a mess. Reflect on it.
Rejected by Kevin, Rory slumped his shoulders and disappeared into the crowd. Later, Kevin heard a disheartening story about Rory from the executive director. Rory had cunningly swindled money from a young relative who had just started working.
That fool. He said he could multiply the money through investments. How awful! What happened to the money? We caught him and made him return it all. Then, we cut him off. I'm fed up. I'm really sorry for the trouble my son caused, especially at your wedding. If he troubles you again, please contact me right away. Thank you so much, sir.
The executive director looked very tired, perhaps due to the stress. Having a child with such a character brought unimaginable hardships to parents. Kevin felt truly sorry for him. He strongly hoped his unfilial son, Rory, would receive the punishment he deserved. A few months later, on a holiday afternoon, Kevin and I went for a drive. The purpose was to get our child to nap. When we put him in the car, he fell asleep quickly. There was a large river running through the city, with vast riverbanks on both sides.
When I was gazing out absent-mindedly, I let out an unintentional "Aw, what's wrong? Did you forget something?" "No, it's not that. I just saw someone down by the riverbank." "It was him." "Him? You mean Rory?" Yes. He was dirty and disheveled, walking with others dressed similarly.
Even from a distance, his walk and gestures made it clear. It was undoubtedly Rory. Now, it seemed he found a place to stay somewhere along this riverbank. He was probably scraping his living by collecting cans and old books to sell. He might be lining up for soup kitchens, or perhaps even scavenging leftover food. I didn't feel sorry for him. Rather, it seemed fitting for someone like him. Rory, who hurt my friend and tried to ruin Kevin's and my wedding. For years in prison was too lenient. I thought he deserved to atone for his actions over a much longer period. Hoped he would fall even lower than where he was now. I strongly wished that. Life for Kevin and me has been smooth sailing. Calm, without major troubles, just as we'd hoped. Our relationship with both of our in-laws is good, and our child is growing up healthy. Neither Kevin nor I have any intention of spoiling our child. We don't want to raise someone who finds joy in others' suffering. What's right and what's wrong? What it means to behave as a decent human being. I want to be a parent who can properly convey these values. Rory's crimes have led us to these convictions. In that sense, his existence may not be entirely useless.